Desiree's Dream. Chapter 19. The Three Strangers. The morning sun bathed the countryside in a warm glow, its rays shimmering through the trees and casting shadows on the dewy grass. Desi sat on the porch, cradling a ceramic mug in her hands, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee tickling her senses. She took a sip, savoring the warmth sliding down her throat, watching Alex mount his horse and wagon ride off toward the rising sun. His figure grew smaller until he disappeared over the horizon, leaving a trail of dust in his wake. Desi's mind drifted back to the night before. The kiss. It had been electric, igniting a fire within her that she couldn't extinguish. She could still feel his lips on hers, the softness, the urgency. Unlike anything she'd ever known, a longing filled her, and she yearned for his return. She tried to steady her racing heart with a deep breath, unsure how to endure the separation. Shaking off her reverie, Desi finished her coffee, the ceramic clinking lightly against the saucer, and rose to her feet. Inside the cabin, the morning chores awaited her. Beauregard stretched and yawned before strolling down the path toward the creek. Desi made her way to the barn, the earthy scent of hay filling her nostrils. She milked the cow, the gentle animal mooing softly as she worked. Then, she scattered feed for the chickens and gathered the freshly laid eggs in their warm shells. The barn smelled of straw and animals, a comforting aroma that spoke of home. Back at the cabin, Desi unpinned the damp clothes from the line and placed them in a wicker basket, the fabric still holding the faint scent of sunshine. She set the table with a hunk of cheese, its pungent odor filling the air, and a loaf of bread, its crust crackling as she sliced through it. A large tin mug, filled to the brim with creamy milk, completed the rustic meal. With her chores momentarily finished, Desi decided to take advantage of the warm weather and the secluded location. She gathered her soiled clothes, the fabric rough against her skin, and made her way to the creek, the sound of rushing water guiding her. The cool, shaded path led her to a secluded spot where the water sparkled like liquid diamonds. Desi slipped out of her clothes, her skin tingling as the morning breeze caressed her, and stepped into the water, shivering slightly. She lathered herself with a bar of soap scented with lavender, its fragrance mixing with the earthy smell of the creek. The water lapped at her ankles, then her knees, as she sank deeper, letting it wash away the morning's toil. She dunked her head, the cool water enveloping her, the sound of the creek now muted. As she resurfaced, a sudden noise made her heart skip a beat. She froze, water dripping from her hair, and listened. The sound of a twig snapping echoed through the quiet forest. Fear prickled her skin as she scanned the surroundings. Beauregard's bark, now distant, confirmed her suspicions. Desi scrambled out of the water, her heart hammering in her chest, and grabbed her clothes, hastily drying herself with a corner of her dress. She wrapped herself in a large blanket, its rough fabric providing little comfort against her shaking body. She rushed back toward the cabin with one last glance at the tranquil creek. But before she could reach safety, three figures emerged from the bushes, their horses' hooves thundering on the red clay path. Desi froze, her eyes wide, as they encircled her, cutting off her retreat. The riders sat atop their horses, their faces obscured by the shadows of their broad-brimmed hats. Desi's breath quickened, her grip tightened on the blanket, her knuckles turning white and exposing her legs above her knees. The intruders' gazes lingered on Desi, their eyes glinting with a hunger that was all too familiar. They looked at her like a ripe fruit, ready to be plucked and savored. The air was thick with their desire, a cloying musk that made Desi's skin crawl. She could see the tall man's tongue dart out, wetting his lips as he dismounted his horse, the saddle leather creaking under his weight. Desi's heart pounded, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that made her breasts heave. She knew what they wanted, but she refused to be a victim. She steeled herself, her voice shaking slightly as she warned, "You better leave, my boyfriend is due any time." The tall man laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to echo over the land. He tugged at his gun belt, the metal buckle clinking ominously. He removed his hat, revealing a shock of dark hair, and tossed it aside. As he approached, his eyes roved over her body, lingering on the swell of her breasts, visible through her damp blanket. "Alex is working at the shop," he said, his voice a sinister drawl. "He won't bother us." Desi stood frozen, her body stiff with fright. She could smell him now, a pungent mix of sweat, dust, and something more primal. She leaned away as he reached out, his calloused hand stroking her wet hair. She pulled back, hoping he would take the hint. The man, furious with rejection, reared his arm and backhanded her, sending blood splattering on the ground. Before Desi could regain her senses, he grabbed her tightly, his strong fingers digging into her soft shoulder. His lips ground into Desi's closed mouth, and she tried to bite him. Beauregard wanted to protect Desi, tugging at her man's pant legs and biting at his boots. Then, suddenly, Beauregard yelped and fell to the ground as a loud blast echoed from behind the man. One of the intruders stood with his pistol smoking, the sharp tang of gunpowder mingling with the earthy scent. The tall man paused momentarily, his eyes flicking towards the fallen K-9, but soon, his attention returned to Desi, more intense than before. She kicked out with all her might, her knee connecting with his groin. He released her instantly, doubling over with a grunt of pain, his hands clutching his private area. The other riders, shocked, dismounted their horses, their boots thudding onto the dusty ground. Desi, seizing the moment, disappeared into the cabin. She rushed to the fireplace, her heart pounding in her ears, and grabbed the 4-10 shotgun from the mantel. The metal was cold and heavy in her hands, but it was a comforting weight to hold. She pulled back the hammer, the click echoing through the small cabin. The tall man, recovering, appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of rage and pain. The other men watched, their eyes wide with surprise and a hint of fear. Suddenly, a deafening blast filled the air, the shotgun kicking back against Desi's shoulder. The tall man was thrown backward, his body flying out the door, a spray of blood and splintered wood following him. Desi followed the tall man out the door. The shotgun was pointed at the remaining men, and the blanket that had been wrapped around her was now resting on the cabin floor. She was no longer the frightened girl they had cornered. She was powerful, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. Seeing the resolve in her eyes, the men didn't need to be told twice. They helped their fallen comrade onto his horse, his groans of pain filling the air, and led him away, their retreating figures kicking up a cloud of dust. Desi approached Beauregard's motionless body, her heart pounding with concern. She knelt beside him, her eyes tracing the trail of blood that stained his rugged fur. The wound, though dramatic with blood oozing from a deep cut near his eye, seemed less severe upon closer inspection. With delicate care, she cradled his head, her fingers brushing against the coarse whiskers on his cheek. Desi lifted him with surprising ease, her slight frame belying her strength. She weaved through the yard, her steps careful yet purposeful, the weight of Beauregard and the shotgun a familiar burden. The sound of the nearby creek's gentle babble, its calm waters inviting her and her companion. She reached the bank, the moss-covered stones glistening beneath her feet, and carefully lowered Beauregard, his body relaxing into the moist earth. Desi smiled as her pet started moving his legs, trying to swim. As she tended to Beauregard's wound, the creek's soothing melody accompanied her actions. She rinsed the dirt and grime from his face, the fresh water mingling with the coppery scent of blood. She cleaned the injury with gentle hands, her touch soothing as she stemmed the blood flow. Desi covered his injury with soft rags, her movements efficient yet tender. She then turned her attention to herself, the cool water refreshing against her skin as she washed away the remnants of the day's chaos. The scent of the forest, a melange of damp earth and pine, filled her senses, providing a momentary respite. Time marched on, marked by the soft gurgle of the creek. With urgency in her step, Desi gathered her belongings and carried Beauregard back to the cabin. Inside, the dimly lit space welcomed her. She placed Beauregard in a corner, his body now nestled within the folds of a well-worn blanket, its fabric soft from years of use. Aware of Alex's impending return, Desi's movements became swift yet graceful. She pressed cold, damp cloths to her swollen lip, the sting of the injury contrasting with the soothing coolness of the fabric. Once a scene of chaos, the cabin slowly transformed as she tidied up, restoring order to their sanctuary. Soon, the ordeal that had once filled her senses slowly subsided. She filled a cup of coffee and sat at the table, resting on the shotgun, waiting for Alex to return. As she slept, leaning over the table, her eyes fluttered, and her body started to relax after the traumatic ordeal. Suddenly, the heavy wooden door swung open abruptly, its hinges creaking in protest. Desi, startled by the sudden intrusion, reacted instinctively. Her hand flew to the shotgun on the table, her fingers curling around the cold metal with familiarity. In a fluid motion, she aimed the weapon directly at Alex, her finger hovering over the trigger. Time seemed to stand still as Alex's startled gaze met the gun barrel. His eyes widened, reflecting a mix of surprise and fear. He leaped to the side swiftly, his heart pounding in his chest. Desi, realizing her mistake, let out a gasp. The shotgun slipped from her grasp, landing on the worn wooden table with a loud thud. "Oh, Alex, forgive me," she whispered, her voice trembling with remorse. Desi's eyes, glassy with unshed tears, searched his face for forgiveness. Without hesitation, she rushed towards him, her steps hurried and desperate. Alex, taken aback by her sudden embrace, felt the warmth of her body against his and the tremors racking her frame. Pulling back slightly, Alex cupped Desi's chin, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that had begun to spill. He noticed Desi's lips swollen, eyes bloodshot, and the telltale bruises peeking beneath her sleeves. Gently, he guided her to the table, his heart aching at the sight of her distress. Desi lowered her gaze, shame and embarrassment evident in her posture. Across from her, Alex took her hand, his touch gentle and reassuring. "Sweetheart, what's happened?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Desi's eyes met his, and a lone tear journeyed down her cheek. Her voice, shaky at first, began to narrate the harrowing tale of the three riders. She spoke of Beauregard, the terror in her voice palpable as she recalled kicking him where it hurt the most. With renewed determination, she described grabbing the shotgun, the sound of the blast echoing in the small room as she fired at the tall intruder, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Alex listened, his emotions swirling. He wanted to comfort her, but there was also a sense of admiration for the fierce woman before him. Her bravery and strength were evident in every word she spoke. As she detailed the appearance of the riders, his eyes narrowed, anger simmering within, as he pictured his fired co-workers at the cotton warehouse. Alex rose, his movements purposeful. He reached for the shotgun, his fingers wrapping around the familiar grooves of the stock. Understanding his intent, Desi pleaded, "No, Alex, please don't. I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. We'll go to the authorities in the morning, let them handle it." Her voice laced with desperation, her hands clasped tightly around the weapon. Alex's gaze softened as he looked into her eyes, seeing the fear and love reflected there. Slowly, he nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in her words. He embraced her, holding her close, feeling her heart racing against his. The warm morning sun cast a golden hue over the countryside as Alex and Desi set out on the dusty road to Mobile, determined to seek justice. The weight of the previous night's events hung heavy on their shoulders, but they marched forward with resolute steps. When they arrived, the air carried the scent of wildflowers mingling with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee from a nearby diner. The journey to the city was a quiet one, filled with unspoken thoughts and reflections. Alex occasionally stole glances at Desi with a protective gaze, ensuring she was holding up. Desi's usually vibrant aura had dimmed, but her determination shone through. A quiet strength shone on her face. Upon reaching Mobile, the bustling atmosphere enveloped them. The sounds of horses, bustling pedestrians, and the distant chatter from the marketplace filled the air. They made their way to the courthouse, a grand building with towering columns and an air of solemn importance. Inside, the marble floors echoed with the footsteps of determined strides. Desi's testimony became the centerpiece of the trial. Her words were a powerful weapon, painting a vivid picture of the crime. Her voice trembled with raw emotion as she recounted the harrowing events, yet her gaze remained steadfast. The jury, especially the women, were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with tears as Desi's ordeal was retold. The courtroom fell into a profound silence, broken only by the occasional sniffles and the somber rustling of papers. Hours turned into days, and the trial continued. Alex, ever supportive, was by Desi's side each day, providing a pillar of strength. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, but Desi's unwavering presence captivated the entire audience. Finally, the trial concluded. The verdict was guilty. The judge's gavel echoed through the courtroom, sealing the fate of the accused. The three perpetrators were led away, the clanking of handcuffs and the murmurs of the crowd filling the air. Desi and Alex emerged from the courthouse as the dust settled, the weight of justice hanging in the air. The following days were a period of healing. Desi slowly unfurled her petals like a fragile flower, reclaiming her strength. Alex's unwavering patience and support were her sanctuary. He understood the importance of giving her the time and space to mend. Gradually, Desi's laughter began to echo through their home, the sound as comforting as a familiar melody. The 2 months following the trial were a journey of restoration, a testament to the human spirit's resilience.